The moment nobody talks about. There is a moment in sports that rarely gets the attention it deserves. Not a championship point, not a comeback, not a defining match, but a quiet, ordinary, completely unscripted second when the world simply moves on without asking permission. That moment happened in Rome, and the person it happened to handled it in a way nobody saw coming. Coco Gauff was sitting at an outdoor cafe inside the Foro Italico, the legendary venue that has hosted some of the most electric moments in tennis history. It was early morning, the kind of soft Roman morning where the light sits golden and low, and the crowd drifts through the courtyard in no particular hurry, espressos in hand, phones half-raised, unhurried and unhurried. Coco had a simple breakfast in front of her. Fruit, yogurt, water. She was doing what any 20-something does during a rare, quiet moment, scrolling her phone, half present, half somewhere else entirely. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't avoiding anyone. She was simply existing, which for a Grand Slam champion in the middle of a major tournament is its own quiet luxury. Then something changed. It never happens all at once. That's the thing about these moments. It began as a ripple. Someone across the courtyard rose a little too quickly. A coffee cup tipped and spilled across the stone floor, and the person who knocked it over didn't even look down. A young couple near the fountain grabbed each other's arms and started whispering, eyes locked on something near the main entrance. Phones that had been face down on tables were suddenly lifted into the air. Coco felt it before she understood it. The way you sense a weather change before the sky actually darkens. The fans who had been hovering near her table, hoping for a photo, an autograph, just the proximity of someone great, were quietly, almost politely, drifting away. Not rudely, not urgently, simply moving, as if drawn towards something they couldn't quite resist. She put down her fork. She turned around. And there she was. Alex Eala had just walked through the main entrance of the Foro Italico. No entourage. No security detail cutting a path through the crowd. No announcement, no fanfare, no production. Just a young woman in a white shirt and dark leggings, cap pulled low, arriving for practice like it was the most natural thing in the world. The courtyard didn't treat it that way. Within 30 seconds, the scattered, sleepy crowd had become something else entirely. People were on their feet, moving toward Alex with a quiet, collective urgency, like a tide responding to the moon. They weren't running or shouting. They were simply drawn. And in the middle of all of it, alone at her table, Coco Gauff watched it happen. The smile here is what makes this story different from every other crowd ignores tennis star moment you've ever heard about. Coco Gauff smiled. Not a forced smile. Not the media-trained, camera-ready kind that says everything is fine when it isn't. A real one, small, soft, and knowing. The kind that only surfaces in someone who has genuinely come to understand something most people spend years refusing to accept. She shook her head slightly, barely perceptibly. Then she picked up her fork and kept eating. That footage spread across the internet within hours. Tennis fans, sports commentators, and people who had never watched a single match in their lives all had something to say. But one comment cut through the noise and captured everything. She's been the Alex in someone else's story before. She knows exactly how this feels. That line is the key to everything. The DM that started it all. To understand why Coco reacted the way she did, you have to go back further. Back to a single Instagram message that quietly changed both of their lives. It was 2025, the Italian Open. And Alex Eala was a very different player from the one now causing Roman crowds to abandon their breakfasts. Ranked just outside the top 100, she was still battling for the kind of consistent results that separate promising talents from genuine contenders. Young, bold, clearly gifted, but still climbing. What she did next required something that talent alone cannot provide. It required nerve. She opened Instagram. She found Coco Gauff's profile, and she typed out a message asking if Coco wanted to be her doubles partner in Rome. Sit with that for a moment. Coco Gauff was a Grand Slam champion, a former doubles world #1, a player with a full career's worth of reputation and accomplishment behind her name. Alex had met her exactly once, briefly, at the Madrid Open just weeks earlier. A quick hello. Barely a conversation. And yet she hit send. Most players never would have. Most would have talked themselves out of it before the message was half written, assuming the answer was no without ever asking the question. Coco said yes. She slid into my DMs and asked me to play, and I was like, sure, why not? That quote tells you everything about Coco Gauff. No overthinking. No hierarchy. No let me check with my team. Just yes. She knew Alex's reputation in doubles, 2 junior Grand Slam titles, a game genuinely built for partnership, and she respected it. They had barely spoken, but Coco didn't need a long history to recognize talent and reward boldness. So they played. And something happened that went far beyond whatever the scoreboard recorded. They won back-to-back matches in straight sets. But if you watch the footage from that week, what stays with you isn't the tennis. It's the energy between them. Laughing between points. Celebrating like they'd been friends for years. Sitting side by side in on-camera interviews with the easy, unforced comfort of people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. She's such a nice person, Coco said at the time. When there are finally people my age on tour, I'm glad to interact. That line carries more weight than it might appear to. Tennis is a profoundly lonely sport. You travel constantly, compete week after week against the same faces, and the pressure never fully lifts. Finding someone who makes the whole experience a little lighter, that's genuinely rare. Coco found that in Alex. They fell in the end, losing to the eventual champions. But something had been quietly built between them that no scoreboard could measure, a real friendship, forged in the middle of a sport that makes real friendship hard to come by. When friends become opponents, fast forward to 2026, and the two of them were no longer just friends. They had become each other's most complicated tests. Their first meeting across the net that year came in Dubai, and everything about the match was charged before the first ball was struck. The crowd was overwhelmingly, almost deafeningly pro-Alex. Philippine flags stretched across the stadium, a wall of noise that transformed every Eala winner into a celebration and every Gauff error into something approaching a street party. Coco Gauff, ranked 4th in the world and a Grand Slam champion, was effectively the away team in her own sport. For 2 hours, she played through it. She won 6-1, 6-2. That scoreline says everything about her mental strength, because winning that cleanly in that environment doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you've learned to convert pressure into fuel rather than let it become a weight. After the match, Coco took the microphone and said something most champions would never have the self-awareness or the generosity to say. I know you're mostly supporting Alex, but I have to say, it is great to be on a crowded court. I've played this tournament many years, and to see this stadium full means a lot. The crowd went quiet. They had spent 2 hours cheering against her. She was thanking them for showing up. Then she went further. I'd like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to this sport. I really appreciate it. Read that again slowly. The world number 4, a Grand Slam champion, publicly thanking her opponent for turning her into the villain. And meaning every word of it. That's not public relations. That's not strategy. That is someone who loves tennis more deeply than she loves winning the room. When a journalist pressed her afterward on how she maintained focus with the crowd so completely against her, her answer, to be continued, the quote that spread everywhere, her answer became one of the most shared quotes in tennis that entire year. Whenever you guys were cheering for Alex, I was pretending it was my name. She laughed when she said it, but she also meant every word. It's the same psychological mechanism Novak Djokovic weaponized throughout his career. Rather than resisting the crowd's hostility, he absorbed it, redirected it, and made it his own energy source. Coco had learned that same lesson the hard way at the French Open, carried it to Dubai, and it worked perfectly. Their second meeting in 2026 unfolded in an entirely different direction. It came at Indian Wells. Alex took the first set 6-2 and was up 2-0 in the second, the momentum entirely in her favor. Then Coco called for a medical timeout. Her left arm, which had been managing some level of discomfort throughout the tournament, had finally reached a point where continuing wasn't possible. She walked to the net and retired from the match. For Alex, it was a deeply complicated victory. I really didn't want to win this way, she said afterward. You could hear the sincerity in it. She wasn't performing false modesty. She genuinely wanted to earn it, cleanly, completely on her own terms. But what came next is the part nobody who witnessed it has ever forgotten. It was International Women's Day. Alex had the microphone on center court at one of the biggest venues in the sport. She could have used that moment to talk about herself, her journey, her ranking, the significance of her rise. She chose to talk about Coco instead. First and foremost, I want to say Happy Women's Day to everybody. I want to thank all the incredible women who have paved the way and advocated for themselves and for other women. Among them is Coco. Thank you, Coco, for being an amazing competitor and an amazing role model. I really hope everything is well and that you recover soon. On a day that belonged to her, Alex Eala gave her moment away. Coco saw it from the locker room and responded on Instagram. I'm sorry it had to end like this. I'll see you next year. Best of luck for the rest of the tournament. It's always a pleasure sharing the court with you. No bitterness. No frustration about the injury. Just warmth, directed sincerely at the person who had just beaten her. The smile, explained, which brings us back to that Roman morning and that small, knowing smile. When the crowd rose from their tables and drifted away from Coco Gauff's breakfast toward Alex, standing at the entrance, they weren't making a statement about rankings or Grand Slam titles or who is the objectively superior player. They were responding to something electric, something Alex carries with her that fills rooms and empties seats and makes people abandon their espressos without a second thought. Coco Gauff understood that completely, because she has lived it. She has been the one who walked into a room and changed the atmosphere simply by arriving. She knows what it looks like from the outside, and she knows what it feels like from the inside. And she has enough perspective, enough genuine affection for Alex to recognize the moment for exactly what it was, without making it about herself. That is genuinely rare. In professional sports, ego isn't a flaw, it's practically a job requirement. You have to believe you are the best, or the pressure will eventually break you. But the truly great ones, the ones who last and who are remembered for more than their trophies, learn to hold confidence and humility at the same time without dropping either. Coco Gauff is doing exactly that. And Alex Eala, in her own way, is doing the same, showing up without fanfare, sliding into Grand Slam champions' DMs, using Women's Day speeches to celebrate someone who just defeated her, and refusing to let success make her smaller, louder, or less herself. After the cameras left, what happened later that day in Rome, after the practice courts emptied and the cameras put away, was witnessed by only a handful of people nearby. Coco and Alex crossed paths near the players' lounge. No crowd, no phones, no audience. Just two young women who have already been through more in their early careers than most players encounter in a lifetime. There was a hug, a few quiet words, a shared laugh. Those who witnessed it described the scene simply. It looked like two friends who were genuinely happy to see each other. Because that is precisely what they are. What began as a bold Instagram message has grown into something the tennis world doesn't quite have a category for. It isn't a rivalry, even though they compete. But because she understood something fundamental, Alex Eala's rise does not diminish her. It expands the world they both inhabit. More fans, more noise, more packed stadiums, more people screaming for someone who isn't you. That isn't a loss. That is the sport growing. And a bigger sport has room for both of them. The question everyone is asking now is straightforward. When they meet again, and they will, somewhere between a baseline and a net on one of the sport's grandest stages, who does the crowd choose? Who walks away with the match? Does Coco Gauff finally transform those partisan crowds into something closer to neutral respect? Does Alex Eala prove that Indian Wells was the beginning of a genuine power shift rather than a single exception? Nobody knows yet. And honestly, that uncertainty is precisely what makes it worth watching. Two players, one friendship, an entire sport getting louder because of what they have built between them. Whatever comes next, one thing is settled. You can measure the distance between two players in rankings, trophies, and head-to-head records. But the distance between Coco Gauff and Alex Eala, whatever number you assign to it, keeps shrinking. And that quiet Roman morning, with one champion smiling softly at her yogurt while the world walked past her toward the next great thing, might be the moment we one day look back on and say, that's when we finally understood what this story was really about.